think good morning or good afternoon. It's still morning. And I am grateful to the organizers of this conference that gave me the opportunity to share my experience and views with the audience here. But first, a disclaimer. My remarks represent my own personal views. It's not necessarily of the institution I am affiliated with, the National Defense University, U.S. government, or any other government. So my remarks will be only my personal remarks. During the past few days, and also today, we heard very, very important, very useful assessment of the situation in Afghanistan and what the stability policing actually experienced in the country. What were the obstacles? What were the means to do it? And how we did, and how we failed, and how we succeed in some areas. In the past, the two the syndicates that we have, the workshop, I think they come up with a very, very important takeaways, conclusions. We'll share most of them. And therefore, I believe I thank them for doing such a very comprehensive analysis of the situation. There are other assessments made these days also about the situation and what we learned from Afghanistan, particularly the recent police report of SIGAR, which was released earlier this month, last month, and was a very comprehensive report. I found them, and I believe that you will find it very interesting if you just look at it. But what I'm doing today is I'm sharing with you some more personal experience that I commented, in Afghanistan, which is a very, very difficult time that I had. Actually, it took me 8 months to think when I was asked to join the cabinet after the collapse of the Taliban and serve as the Minister of Interior. At that time, Ministry of Interior also was responsible for all provincial governments, all municipalities, and immigration services and intelligence, and of course, police. And it took me 8 months whether I should take that position or not. That year, 2000, the beginning of 2002, I published an article in Asia Survey. And given the situation in Afghanistan we had, and also the way that the international community started intervention in Afghanistan, I thought that, well, God, if we cannot our acts together, the Afghans cannot get their acts together and use this opportunity, and also if the international community get acts together in Afghanistan, it's going to be goose chase. And therefore, can I do it? But they were very insistent. Finally, at the end of 2002, I took that office and continued almost for 3 years at the October of 2005. So what I'm talking here is two things. First is the problem with the context, changing context. The second is my observation. Once in the National Defense University, I listed my observations, and I counted to 10, then I stopped. So I will share some of those observations with you. First of all, the context and the problem with the context. The international community in their intervention in Afghanistan did not go to Afghanistan to fix a failed state. It was an accidental war. Had the 9/11 attack did not take place, the terrorist attack in Afghanistan, I don't think the United States would have the decision to intervene in Afghanistan. If there was a decision, the best time was 1992, after the Soviet forces left Afghanistan, and the Afghan resistance actually succeeded to end the occupation of the Soviet Union. That was the best time. But everybody left that time. So that 2001, it was an accidental war. In an accidental war, that was no plan what's going to happen after you defeat the nasty terrorists who attacked the United States, and the Taliban who were hosting them and was refused to hand them over. So what will happen after that? There was no idea at that time. I was in Washington at that time. I was the director of programs to Central Asia, Iran, and Afghanistan. At that time, I knew that Washington, everybody was that hated that the guy that they attacked them, which was fine. Everybody wanted that. And that was a very legitimate cause for intervention. But nobody knew what is going to happen after that. In early October in Washington, they know what will happen when you remove the Taliban, who will replace them in Afghanistan. There was no plan. And on the other hand, many in the intelligence community at that time believed that Taliban are very well entrenched and it will take a long time to overthrow them. Some people thought this will take maybe 1 year. Some thought maybe it was probably more than that. So, therefore, the rebuilding the country of the Taliban was not a pacing, element in the intervention. But now, from the first bomb that landed in Afghanistan on October 7, in 2 months, the Taliban was overthrown. The Al-Qaeda network was disrupted, and their leaders were on the run. It is not because Afghans wanted that. The Taliban actually seized control in Afghanistan in the 1960s because people were fed up with infighting, lawlessness, militias fighting each other, and to bring some sense of stability, some sense of law and order, and then to unify the country. But the same three major factors worked against them. One was that they actually introduced Islam the way that Afghans were unfamiliar with it. The way they discriminated some ethnic groups like Tajiks and Hazaras. And third, they actually brought foreigners. They brought Al-Qaeda, they brought the Arab volunteers and others. So that actually was there. The invasion that started in Afghanistan, the US-led invasion, actually only 500 operatives were on the ground. And of course, the air support was there. So Afghans were very happy to do that. They looked at the Operation Enduring Freedom as a rescue operation. This is the first time in Afghan history that they welcomed the invasion from outside. That was, however, that euphoria disappeared very quickly. Inside Afghanistan, there was militias, powerful militias. The economy was in shambles. People just wanted somebody to come and help them. And also, they were also frustrated with the interference of the main neighbors, including Pakistan, Iran, and others. So they are in a position that you could build Afghanistan at that time with the kind of rebuilding the constitution, including stability policing. But unfortunately, that was not the case because Taliban were overthrown from power but not defeated. Therefore, the militias who were fighting each other in the past all of a sudden reactivated their networks and started destabilizing the country. So therefore, it was the problem. On the other hand, the one problem with the context was this, that Initially, it was a light footprint. It means that only limited US forces were on the ground, and also some other countries. I remember during my, in the 3 years I was Minister of Interior, the number of international forces in Afghanistan did not exceed 16,000. And then international police was not deployed in Afghanistan. And third, ISAF was only restricted to operate only in Kabul. They were helping me, of course, but in the security, it was not a security force. It was security support force. So, therefore, the gap was there. There were militias, there were criminals, there were terrorists, insurgents, and it created that. That gap was suddenly occupied by all these. For Taliban, they offered in the 2001, maybe December 2001, or November 2001, that they would like to join the political process to bring peace to Afghanistan. 70–80% of them were ready to join the process, but they were excluded from the Bonn Conference for the peace conference, because many countries thought that there's a spent force, they are defeated. But in fact, the problem was that this was a civil war, that in that civil war, one side was supported by the international community, that were the militias that helped overthrow the Taliban. The other side was ignored. Peace can come either through one side defeat the other side, or you reach a kind of political settlement. Neither one took place. So Taliban were overthrown but not defeated. They just would go underground, would cross the border into Pakistan to regroup. And they were excluded from Bonn. Another chance that we had later on, of course it was late in 2003, when Taliban again came to the government of Afghanistan. They contacted us. They sent their emissaries, high-level emissaries, to me, to Minister of Defense, to President Karzai, and some others. They had two demands. First, to be immune from prosecution. Second, to allow them to act as a political party. But even at that time, several elements in Afghanistan did not want the Taliban. In the international community, nobody took that risk. They thought it was a spent force. That chance was also gone. So therefore, Afghanistan was not a post-conflict situation. It was a conflict situation. We dealt with it as a conflict situation. What this means that whatever resources we had deployed and hoped that we will stabilize the country with the means we have was not working. On the other hand, it is a principle. I have seen it in the past in Afghanistan, that you have to deal with the situation you face, not the situation you know very well, or a situation you wish. At that time, our friends came across from all around the world, very, very, welcome. They welcomed them very well, but they came for their own ideas. I was talking to the high-level delegation from Germany about policing. The first thing he told me, he said, Afghanistan needs 50,000 uniformed police. I said, why this 15,000? Where did it come from? He said, well, in Germany, we have a norm that for each 500 unit of population, you need one police officer. Afghanistan is 25 million. So it means 50,000. He said, how about the situation in Afghanistan? And how different this country is from your country? And then my very good the judge from Italy once was talking to me, very nice person. He helped me a lot. He said, police cannot hold violators more than 24 hours. That's what we do. I said, in 24 hours, I cannot bring the violators even to the detention center. And then I told him that, how can I trust the Attorney General's office, which is corrupt? If the moment I send him there, he will be free. So therefore, give us some kind of a different kind of advice that will work with us. It didn't, because the security sector was stovepiped. It was a broken system. Because different countries were dealing, or they were a leading nation to develop one aspect of the security, the army, the police, the DDR, the counter-narcotics, and also the justice sector. But each country was doing their own job. It was stovepiping. I think Professor Erdem did very well job on this when he was talking about it. On the other hand, they come in these countries with different level of commitment, different level of resources, different level of procedures, different concerns back home with them. So it was stovepiping. It didn't work, and it was a kind of, I called it at that time only burden sharing, load sharing. That you do this, I will do this. Not as a system. That's why it worked. Then, the difficult problem I faced was that with the conflict situation, while it was dealt with post-conflict situation, police all of a sudden became militarized because the international forces were not enough, so they were using police. And that's they begin from the beginning all the way to the end. Police become militarized. In this way, I come from, I have seen insurgency from different sides. During the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, I was part of the resistance, fighting them. When I was Minister of Interior, I was counter-insurgent. I was dealing with them. During my journalistic life, I was an outside observer of insurgencies in Tajikistan. So therefore, in any insurgency, what is important, it is to win the trust of people. It's a fight between two minorities and one majority. Government is one minority, and the insurgents are the other minority. And the majority is the population. Who is going to win the population? Can you use them by winning his trust, providing services to them, protect them from warlords, protect them from criminals, protect them from drug traffickers? If you do that, they will trust you. If you yourself get involved in these criminal activities, they will not trust you. Therefore, it is the question of legitimacy there, sir. Legitimacy in Afghanistan is a very unique situation. You know, in classic term, legitimacy is a different definition, because you have to have the monopoly of the use of force. And you have to have that support from the population. In Afghanistan, there are three elements that actually created the majority, the legitimacy despite the problems that the government had. First, of course, government had held elections, established the institutions to deliver services. People actually think that government is good, should be there. Even when the government rigged the elections, when the government condoned corruptions, when government, high-ranking governments were involved in corruption, when militias were influencing police, influencing the army, influencing the courts, still they said, okay, why? They still called the government legitimate. We got two other elements. One was the alternative was bad. That was Taliban. That's okay. It's better than the Taliban. Because all surveys that we see from Asian surveys did that every year. The Taliban had more support than 10% or 9%. People didn't like them. They didn't want them to come back because they experienced the bad days under Taliban. So they did not want them to come. So that's a bad alternative, actually, give the legitimacy to the government by default. The third was international support. The international support, international standing, that was a major element in the legitimacy of the government. Now, what happens? When the Taliban made inroads because they exploited the mistrust, exploited the lack of services, all other things, the Taliban made inroads, so that element of legitimacy was weakened. And then when the international community left, or they announced that they are leaving, the other element of legitimacy was gone. So what will happen? That was the beginning of the end for the government. So the other issue that I want to use in Afghanistan, it was the time. Time was very important. The entity, I coined two words. You have to outweigh and outwit the other side. Okay, the Taliban and their supporters were very quick. They said the only way that you can win is to see the government is not doing. It is the government. Who create a better government? Gradually, when the government behaved badly, they gained something. I think it was discussed by several speakers here, which I very appreciate that. The second is outweighed. For the Taliban, they said, okay, we can wait. We have no obligation to provide services. We have no concern to fight crimes. We can actually benefit from drug trafficking and other things. But one day, we will continue to chip away anything from the government credibility. That's it. You know, I hear some friends that they said Taliban said that we have the time, the Americans have their watches. This was not coined then. It was coined actually during the resistance. When I heard it from one person, from one Mujahideen commander, he said the Soviets have their watches, we have the time. And that actually was the one that Taliban used. They knew that, well, on the other hand, Pakistan was an ally in this war. But Pakistan also knew what happened in 1992. They will leave one day. When they leave, we will have something to have an influence in Afghanistan. That's why they supported the Taliban, regrouped them, provided the basis for them, and also sent them up. That's one major. This is one thing that the coalition forces never, actually, maybe rarely, took actions that the source of the insurgency is not in Afghanistan but in the neighboring countries. Instead of going on this and targeting that kind of problems, in 2011, I was part of a study group, the congressional mandated study group. In that study group, I think the final report was this, that it is Afghanistan, Pakistan, not Afghanistan only. You have to deal with that. That's it. Then you can resolve the Afghanistan problem. I don't know how much time I have. I don't know. No more.
As a time manager, you have also the watch.
Then one thing, and to conclude, I will say this time, conclude that what happened with the police is that the shifting conditions, shifting strategies, changing attitudes, changing actions that took place by the Afghans and the international community has affected the size, the nature, operations of the police. Because it was, and finally, the international community, including the allies in Afghanistan, did not create a force, police and army, to win. They created a force not to lose. So that was the major problem that eventually sealed the fate of this war.